All good? Great. Well, I've just chaired the first Queensland Disaster Management Committee meeting for our response to what we expect to be Tropical Cyclone Kirrily, expected to be made, declared a tropical cyclone late tonight. There is a chance of a severe tropical cyclone making landfall, although the chance of that intensity has decreased somewhat, and Laura will outline that. The Bureau is warning coastal residents between Townsville and Mackay of dangerous storm tide. People in these affected areas should take measures to protect their property as much as possible and be prepared to follow authorities' instructions. It's now critical that everyone in the area from Cardwell to Airlie Beach monitor the Bureau's warnings and warnings that come from their local government areas. Widespread flooding is likely to follow the cyclone crossing the coast. As you'd appreciate, the crossing and flooding are likely to impact highly populated areas like Townsville and Mackay and Rockhampton. It's incredibly important that individuals and households prepare themselves. The Get Ready website is a fantastic resource, but that's the best way you can make sure that you don't need assistance from our volunteers and our SES. Of course, they will always be there if you need them, but making sure that you have a radio, batteries, bottled water, and canned food, and that you secure any loose objects that could become dangerous is the best way you can help our emergency services and our volunteers. If there are people who live near you who are vulnerable, who might need assistance, today is the day to reach out to them and offer to help them. Energex and Ergon have pre-deploying today electricity workers, energy workers into Rockhampton so that they are as close as they can safely be, ready to move into wherever the cyclone hits. I'll ask Laura to provide more of an update.
Good morning. So a tropical low is currently offshore in the Coral Sea, and it's approximately 840 kilometres east-northeast of Townsville. It is intensifying, and it will likely reach cyclone strength overnight tonight or during Wednesday, so tomorrow morning. It is expected to move southwest towards the Queensland coast, and a coastal crossing is most likely overnight on Thursday, somewhere between Cardwell and Airlie Beach. The chance of a severe tropical cyclone on landfall still remains, but that risk has slightly decreased overnight. Our most likely scenario is still in that track map, which has a Category 3 crossing. So we have a watch zone, which is between Cairns and St. Lawrence, noting that that doesn't include Cairns, so Cairns is the boundary of that watch zone. It does, however, include Townsville, Mackay, and the Whitsunday Islands. So these communities can expect impacts within the next 24 to 48 hours, and we're asking them to stay up to date with all of our forecasts and warnings. Our watches get updated every 6 hours, along with the track maps as well. And when we move into warnings, they will be updated every 3 hours on our website. So moving now to the impacts of what we can expect from this system. So when it is a tropical cyclone, we can expect to see winds. So the gales with damaging wind gusts up to 120 kilometres per hour may develop about the Whitsunday Islands from as early as Wednesday evening, and extend to mainland communities between Townsville and St. Lawrence overnight Wednesday or Thursday morning. We also have the risk of destructive wind gusts of up to 150 kilometres per hour. So additional to these gale force winds, we can see these stronger gusts of winds with tropical cyclones. So they may develop about coastal and inland communities between Cardwell and Bowen, and that includes Townsville during Thursday. Another risk with these systems is the flooding, so that can occur from storm tide as well as heavy rainfall that comes with these systems. So heavy rainfall, which may lead to flash flooding, may develop about coastal areas between Townsville and St. Lawrence from late Wednesday, before spreading to adjacent inland areas and north to Cairns during Thursday and into Friday as well. So this is not just for the crossing, but we will see heavy and intense rainfall as this system crosses and beyond crossing as well. We can also expect intense rainfall, which may lead to dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding, and that's possible close to the centre of this system, so that's where we're likely to see the most intense rainfall. Noting that a lot of this rainfall may fall on catchments that are already very wet or saturated, so catchments will respond very quickly. And there's also a note about the storm tide as well. So coastal residents between Townsville and Mackay are specifically warned of the dangerous storm tide as the cyclone crosses the coast. So the sea is likely to rise steadily up to a level well above the normal tide, with damaging waves and flooding of some low-lying areas, especially close to the shoreline. It's important to note too that this isn't just about the crossing of the cyclone and the rain and the wind that will come with that system, but it's also what will this system do after it crosses the coast. So after the cyclone crosses the coast, it's then expected to weaken into a tropical low. However, as it moves further inland and then south across central and southern Queensland, it will still have with it a significant amount of rainfall. And this could bring heavy rainfall to areas across central and south inland Queensland later this week into the weekend and into next week as well. So this could be a very widespread as well as a very long duration event. And it's for that reason that we're encouraging all residents in Queensland to keep up to date with the forecasts and the warnings that the Bureau of Meteorology will be issuing over the coming days and weeks. Thank you.
Good morning. As we've heard from the Bureau, the State Disaster Management System is effectively planning for two events. We're planning for the cyclone crossing, and for that we ask everyone between Cardwell and Whitsundays to please stay connected to our messaging. But we're also planning for a secondary event that may come from the intense rainfall that the Bureau is forecasting, including flash flooding and riverine flooding. Right through central and southwest Queensland. Now we have deployed additional resources. The system is fully stood up we're engaged with local governments, we're engaged with the district disaster coordination, we are now engaged with our federal disaster counterparts in relation to preparation for this event. But now is the time that Queenslanders can help our emergency services in preparing for the event. If you are on a riverine system, a low-lying area that is subject to flooding, now is the time to prepare for that to occur. Engage with your local disaster management website or our Get Ready Queensland website and take preparation activities now. We have 48 hours to 72 hours to prepare for this event. I've been clear that it is at times up to 72 hours before emergency services can respond to provide assistance to you after these major events like cyclones come across, until it is safe for us to get out and support you. So please take those preparatory activities now. Ensure that you have sufficient supplies, your medications, food, water, communications available to support you for 72 hours. If you are living on a riverine system or a catchment area, please be aware of your flood levels and the impacts to your premises and your neighbours, and take those activities now to ensure that you have an emergency plan ready to go should we see rapid rises in floodwaters throughout our catchment areas across Queensland. The Bureau has indicated to us those catchments are very wet and they will rise a lot quicker than normal, so please take those precautions now. Finally, can I ask everyone, particularly those who are in our remote areas of the state who are intending to camp over the long weekend, to please reconsider that travel into those campgrounds and stay connected with our messaging. Again, our local disaster management websites has the most up-to-date information for your local area, and for our preparedness, our Get Ready Queensland website. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Police have stood up the Police Operations Centre to deploy further resources into the area from Townsville south, particularly additional staff into Palm Island, Ingham and Eyre almost immediately, and other resources to be deployed over the next couple of days. It has been touched on already twice, but can I implore the public to really watch what is, in essence, two events. A cyclone crossing and then major flooding throughout what is going to be a challenging time because of the large geographic spread of this event throughout Queensland. We expect a lot of people on the roads this weekend because it is a long weekend, normally a time where we camp and enjoy the festivities associated with this time of year. In all of those areas, can I please implore that everyone listens to their local authorities and take heed. During the disaster season already, we lost 7 lives in such a short time frame. It was within 2 days of the last couple of events that we've had. So we don't want to see that again. Please stay connected. We know that already the roads, the environment is completely saturated. So the Bureau has been very clear about life-threatening flash flooding. We expect that. Please listen to authorities and make sure that we're all safe throughout this event. Thank you.
In terms of preparedness from QFES, the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, resources were deployed yesterday into the zone. We have got staged resources from Townsville down to Rockhampton, and they include specialist crews and equipment engaged in incident management, communications, and also swift water rescue. Those crews, as I said, were deployed from the southeast corner, and they are in addition to the localised resources and specialised staff that already exist in regions right across the affected area. We've also anticipated that we will need interstate assistance, so we have connected with our interstate counterparts to ask for that support, particularly in swift water rescue. This system is very large in its nature, and at the moment it is slow moving. We anticipate that it will take some time to really feel the effects of both the cyclone and also the tail of that cyclone in flooding. We are asking Queenslanders to stay attuned to the messaging. One of the things that we learnt through the recent Far North Queensland floods is that people get fatigued around the messaging and the warnings that are coming out to them, and we're asking Queenslanders to pay special and close attention to the warnings that are being issued through the BOM and also through their local councils to ensure that people are up to date with the information that they need to stay safe. We are expecting both the cyclone and a high risk of flooding that will flow from that. We're asking Queenslanders to prepare now to make sure that they've got at least 72 hours of emergency supplies so they're able to best support themselves. We want to make sure that our emergency services are deployed where we need them most. And we know that in order to do that, we need Queenslanders to help out and to do their bit by preparing for this system. We'll definitely be working to support councils through the period, and we're also advising Queenslanders to check out the Get Ready Queensland website to ensure that they're up to speed with everything that they can do to keep themselves prepared and safe during this event.
Any questions?
Premier, should Queenslanders who are travelling up north for the long weekend, should they be cancelling their plans? What's the advice there?
Well, they should certainly be monitoring the warnings from the Bureau and keeping track of just what is expected depending on where they're intending to travel to. At this stage, if they are heading to Cairns or north of Cairns, they may intend to continue with their travel, but if they are in that area south of Cairns to Early Beach, they really need to monitor it closely. Let's see if anyone wants to add anything to that.
So in terms of keeping up to date with things around travel plans, we really encourage people to stay up to date with all the forecasts and warnings. So the tropical cyclone watch will give very specific details about that cyclone within that watch area. However, you can use the app or the website to look at how much rainfall to expect in other areas over the coming days, and those rainfall outlooks are up to 7 days, so that can also be used for planning as well for this long weekend.
So it's looking like when it does cross the coast, it's going to be a Category 2, more likely now.
At this stage, the most likely scenario is still a Category 3, so that's what's currently in our track map, and that is the most likely scenario. However, as we're getting more information and as this cyclone is or as this tropical low is slowly forming into a cyclone, we are getting more information, and some of that is indicating that it might not be able to reach that Category 3 before it gets to the coast. So that's definitely a watch and see situation, but at this stage, it's really what's in the track map is the most likely scenario, noting that there's lots of other possible scenarios that we're working with.
And I'm not sure it was Premier or Minister Boyd, in terms of people who were caught up in the last storm event with damage to homes, some had chosen to stay in their homes, what would the advice be for them? Should they be going to an emergency shelter, or what should they be doing?
Certainly the narrowing of the anticipated path to the coastline to south of Cairns means that those worst affected in the far north are unlikely to be impacted in the same way again. Similarly, it's not yet possible to say with certainty what the impact on places like Logan and the Gold Coast will be. That's likely to come into late in the weekend and early next week. So we just encourage everyone to keep an eye on these warnings, listen to their local radio, check the bomb site and their local government area and the Get Ready website to be conscious of what the likely impact on their homes will be. If you want to ask about specific stages of house recovery, I can go to Nikki on that, or...
Yeah, that'd
Yep.
be great.
So the question would be...
So in terms of people who are, I guess, still trying to recover from the storms, it's unlikely that they will be caught up in that, or what is the advice there?
Well, I think for people who were caught up in the storm system in the far north, largely based on the information that's been provided from the BOM, we don't anticipate that they'll be affected by this system in a similar way. One of the things that we are watching, one of the things that we are watching is the rainfall event and how that will impact to the south. So we're in the process of finding out more information on that. But until we see further development with the system, I don't think that it's likely that we'll be able to provide specifics in terms of people's homes that were damaged in the southeast Queensland storms. A lot of those people who had homes damaged have already found alternate accommodation, or they've put in place alternate plans. But I think the overarching message as we're watching this tropical low form, and we anticipate that we'll be heavily affected by this in the coming days, is for people to continually keep up to date with the warnings that are being issued and to continually re-evaluate their plans along with preparing and being ready for worst case scenarios.
Additional interstate help, would that include help from the Army as well?
One of the things that we're doing from the Queensland Fire and Emergency Service is we're looking to get additional capacity in swift water rescue for the crews that will be deployed across the state. In terms of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, we've already initiated conversations with NEMA, so the counterpart at a federal level, to see what kind of federal support could be provided. At the moment, it's unclear what the event will actually bring, and usually that capacity that's provided from a federal level is done so once we've expanded all of the available resources here in the state of Queensland from the interstate counterparts, and then we need the specialised support of the ADF. So certainly we've got a good working relationship there where we've got the lines of communication open at the moment. We're very conscious of the fact that we've asked a lot of our emergency services over the last few weeks. I was up in Cairns only last week where we had rural fire volunteers who were returning from the far north. I know that we've got all of those crews back at the moment and that they've been resupplying and restocking and having a rest. And one of the things that we're also considering is our fatigue management strategies as well. So how we deploy our emergency services workers and volunteers, making sure that we're keeping them safe, particularly in the conditions that are quite tough, and also making sure that we've got the resources on that we need to be able to support Queenslanders in their time of need.
I might just add that I'm heading to far north Queensland today to check on those towns most affected by those events, places like Cape Tribulation, Dagara, Wudjil and Ayton. I've also spoken to Minister Watt and alerted him to the fact that given the size of the likely event here, the large amount of the state likely to be affected, the fact that we're effectively preparing for both of the events we experienced in December occurring again, that we are likely to need additional support from other states and from the Australian government.
Premier, just on another subject, ABS data revealing that number of new homes built in Queensland is falling well short of the desired targets. Why is this, and how do you plan to boost housing construction?
Well, ultimately, the capacity of the construction sector is what we're struggling with here. So we have more people moving to the state than the construction sector can build homes for. That is pushing up rent and house prices and, sadly, pushing some, the most disadvantaged, out of housing and requiring additional support through social, public and crisis housing. We are working with the tools that we have, including the planning system, but ultimately approvals and land releases rest with local government, and so working with them is absolutely critical. We need to get greater capacity into the construction sector. That's why we made TAFE free for tradies and construction apprentices. That will help, but we definitely need greater construction capacity. Once we can increase supply in the private market, that can reduce the number of people falling through the cracks and needing assistance. I have the Housing Minister here though, and I'm happy for her to add to what I've just said.
Thanks, Premier. And as has been said, we've made TAFE and free apprenticeships to grow our own construction workforce. We're rebuilding Q-Build. We're working with councils to unlock infrastructure and more supply. And we also have incentives with developers and community housing providers to unlock more affordable housing, as well as a bill in the Parliament right now to try and reduce red tape. We're doing everything we can to try and unlock supply. We need all levels of government to do the work that we need to do to make sure we can provide homes for Queenslanders.
We've seen a lot of developers tank in the last few months, and particularly last year. How much of an impact is that having on the housing supply, and can more be done to keep those developers afloat?
I think it's certainly having an impact on the construction timeframes and the ability for us to build the amount of homes that we need here in Queensland. And you've seen the government take the lead with rebuilding Q-Build. We're using the levers that we have at our disposal to try and make sure that particularly public and community and affordable housing is being unlocked. But of course we'll continue to work with the sector, and you've seen us do that with bills like the one that we have before the Parliament right now, reducing red tape.
Yeah, so we've seen some reporting this morning that some Queenslanders are renting out sheds, backyards for quite a significant amount of money. Does it disturb you that people are cashing in on the housing crisis in this way?
Look, you know, it's incredibly distressing to see some of the circumstances that people are pushed to, and that's why we brought in laws to make sure that there are minimum standards. I think every Queenslander, every Australian expects there to be minimum conditions on housing standards, and that's why we brought in those reforms.
The average rents in Queensland, in the southeast now, exceeding $700 a week. How will people afford to live in the southeast corner with rents so high?
The best thing we can do is to unlock more supply, and that's what we're focused on. We've just released the South East Queensland Regional Plan that proposes to unlock 900,000 homes. We also want to make sure a proportion of those are social and affordable homes so people can live close to where they work. We're doing everything we can to unlock more supply. There are a lot of challenges right now right across the country, and we're working with the sector on those.
Minister, can we ask you about yesterday?
Sure.
What went wrong? Because at the peak, 41,000 people didn't have power.
Yeah, so there were two reasons why some southeast Queenslanders particularly experienced some power outages. The first was there was a storm that did roll through some suburbs, not all. We saw 213,000 lightning strikes and the usual sorts of impacts of vegetation across power lines. The second reason was some heat impacts on localised hardware. So a combination of high demand and prolonged heat on some localised hardware saw that hardware trip to protect the system. However, there were zero outages related to a lack of supply. So at all times, there was adequate supply of electricity to supply the state. But of course, we want to make sure that the system is as resilient as possible. That's why the Energy Queensland Chief Engineer will review some of that localised hardware. They'll report to me by the end of the week to see if we can make some improvements.
So if Caroline was up and running, everything would have happened yesterday as it did, it wouldn't have made any difference?
There was more than adequate supply, it wouldn't have made any difference.
Did you do any demand management at all? Is that sort of thing?
There was no load shedding whatsoever. We do apply a range of techniques to ensure that the system can be managed, but no power was intervened to be switched off whatsoever.
What's the actual point of failure in a transmission grid? What is it, melting wires and stuff, or what went wrong?
So the investigations will have a look into some localised hardware. So there was no problem with the generation system, no problem with transmission system, but very localised hardware down to a street level, could be a fuse or a transformer. So crews are having a look at it at the moment. At its peak, as we saw, 40,000 odd, around 99% of them have been reconnected. One of the suburbs that had some serious impact was in Camp Hill. That occurred at around 2:30 this morning, so that was well after the heat wave had substantially passed. So that's being investigated as we speak. I want to reiterate our recognition of the hard work of the Energy Queensland crews. They've been working non-stop. They responded to bushfires at the end of 2023, a cyclone, a severe Christmas Day storm, floods, and now they're preparing. They're pre-mobilising into the regions expected to be impacted by Tropical Cyclone Kirrily. So they're working hard every single day. We'll continue to make improvements wherever we can, but what Queenslanders can rest assured of is that there is adequate power supply to get them through this summer.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Did you